Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again. I am still sick, obviously. As you guys know, though, I am getting better every day. So I know from the audio it doesn't sound like it probably, but I am. Today I didn't really have to blow my nose very much, so that, I know that that's a little bit too much information, but, this movie, this movie had a little bit too much information as well. So, I am here to review my first new release movie of 2023, and it's a movie called Women Talking. And for starters, this is probably one of the worst movie titles in human history. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, there are so many bad movie titles, like, especially for modern movies. But you have from all sorts of times, like you have infamously Zorro the Gay Blade. That's a pretty weird movie title. Stuff like that. This movie, it's something that I wouldn't have watched if I wasn't a reviewer. But I kind of, now that I have sort of like a break period, I'm kind of going to look at 2023 movies in a different way. I'm going to kind of look at it like I'm going to watch the stuff no matter what it is for the most part. And then since I'm watching it, I can talk about it and make fun of it. And that's not necessarily to say that it guarantees that I'll like or dislike certain things. It's just that I'm going to kind of look at things that way because, there were some surprises last year in terms of that. And so I think that I'm going to be doing that this year and applying that the whole year. So this movie, I was kind of skirting around talking about it because, wow, it is it's pretty bad. I mean, it's a really good idea. Like, there was a really good idea in the movie in terms of, like, the inspiration of, I guess there was a true story in Bolivia, and it was this Mennonite group in Bolivia, and it was this sort of true story thing that happened, 2010, and it was written into a book and then made into a movie. But the movie is probably the worst out of the three. Like if you were to make like a documentary, and then if you read the book, and then if you watch this movie would probably be the worst of the options, because there's so much mistranslation into the translation. Mistranslation. Okay, I'm gonna redo this. Should I redo this video? I don't. Should I redo this video? Oh, now I'm going to start acting like the movie. I don't want to do that. That's basically all this movie was, though. Like, this movie was an hour and 40 minutes of these women just sitting around talking about, should we leave this colony and go to civilization because we've been abused and raped and mistreated? Should we stay and fight, or should we just forget about everything that's happened? And a lot of the movie is very preachy and very hitting you over the head with like a sledgehammer. Like, you know, the scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre when fucking Leatherface steps out of the back room and he raises the hammer and then just fucking bashes it into the guy's head, and he falls on the ground, starts shaking around with blood going all over the place. Like, that's what I felt like with this movie. Like, that's what the whole movie is just, you know, we're gonna tell you this, and you have to sit there and listen and watch because it's a true story. And that's the thing, is that I've seen a lot of criticism for this movie has been deflected because it's a true story. Well, here's the thing. Just because it's a true story doesn't mean that it's good or bad. Okay, there's a lot of really bad true story movies. Like, you know, for instance, there was this one movie about Ed Gein. And it starred Kane Hodder as Ed Gein. And if you guys don't know, Ed Gein was a serial killer. And they made this movie where he's portrayed as like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. And he has this love interest. And it's all about how, oh no, he's a serial killer with a heart. And he's really in love with this waitress. And he just wants to be with her. But he can't resist his serial killing urges, so whoopsie. And then he gets caught, and then I think, oh, yeah, I think they probably kill him or something, and oh, ugh. But this movie reminded me of that, because this movie had all the same problems that movie had. This movie even had the same color scheme. You know, that's another thing, is that this is another modern movie where they suck out all the color and they make it look like it's almost like black and white. Like they really, like the emo editors, they really just love sucking the joy and sucking the beauty and the art out of movies. Like, I'm thinking about The Reflecting Skin, which, as you guys know, that movie is a piece of shit. That movie also had like a deep message. It was a message movie. The whole movie's about, you know, their pretentious little, like, just talk about, you know, there's like a whole monologue about, you know, you're gonna grow old and you're gonna die and you're gonna be sick and all this crap. That movie was still beautiful and colorful, though. But see, that movie was made years and years ago before they let the emo editors come in and suck out all the color out of film. Nowadays, every movie just looks like a depressing piece of shit. Like, every movie looks like a puddle in the ground, like it's muddy and it's just rained, and then you put a picture in the ground and you rub the mud all over the picture, and then you look at the picture and it's like, that's what movies look like nowadays. They're so ugly, they're so colorless, they're so joyless. You know, it's disgusting what they've done to movies nowadays. Like, that's what part of the problem with this movie was that the movie was already bad enough. But to suck all the color out of the movie and make it look ugly as hell, that made it even worse. And this movie is in only an hour and 40 minutes. But it felt like it felt like 3 hours. Like, I was so bored throughout this whole film because they pretty much just kept on repeating the same points over and over again, and they really didn't go I mean, that's another thing. This movie feels like it might be one of the funniest movies of the year by the end of it, because there were so many points where I was like, God, if you looked at this in like a good bad movie type of way, it would be perfect. Because there's this one part especially where, and I will say this too. Part of the reason that I watched this movie was to support a couple of the actors in it who were in Fargo season 4. They were some of the only good things about Fargo season 4, and so I really wanted to see them in the movie. Otherwise, I would have had more trouble being persuaded to watch it. And one of them was a rabbi from Fargo season 4, and he played this bitch slapped notes taker, and he just sits there the whole movie listening to the women, taking notes, taking the minutes, and I could relate to him because when I did AP Government, that was my job. When we did this stupid government project, I had to sit there in this group of women and I took the minutes because they wouldn't put me as like a bigger role in the project, and so I had to be the minutes taker. And I quickly realized, like, wow, this really is the best job because you just sit there and fucking do nothing, and you just have fun, and you sit back and watch the idiots talk about their little stupid government issues, and it's like that's what like his character was. But he was like this bitch slap guy. The whole movie, there's some really cringeworthy dialogue. Like there's this one part where he's like, I am not here to think, I am only here to listen. And then this woman starts asking him this really inflammatory, like baiting question where she says, if you were told your whole life that your thoughts and opinions were meaningless, how would you feel about that? And he's like, I'm not here to think, I'm only here to listen to what you women have to say. And it's like, that's what the whole movie was. Like, the whole movie was so cringeworthy. It was like, what if Michael Scott from The Office teamed up with Amber Heard to write a movie? Like, that's what this movie was. Like, it was really bad in terms of that. In terms of, it just was like hitting you over the head with this messaging. And basically the messaging was, as you'd expect, men are bad as soon as they reach the age of 16. And all religion is bad too. So that's the messaging of this movie. And I say that because by the end of it, they decide, spoiler alert, I don't really think there's very many spoilers to this movie, because nothing happens in this movie to spoil. They decide that they are only going to, they're going to leave, and they're going to only take the boys who are ages 1 to 15. And they're okay with taking the 13 to 15 year olds because they can teach them, and they can discipline them by squirting water in their face or something like that. Like, I don't know, pretty weird, pretty bizarre. They can educate them, and all the men above that age have to stay. Like, and it's basically implying that in this colony, all the men above the age of 15 have been raping these women. They've all been abusing them. They've all been molesting them. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. You never see anything in this movie. It's just kind of implied. And it's like another one of those movies where, it's another one of those modern movies where they talk about how, we don't show any of the abuse on screen, and that makes our movie better than movies that do. And so none of it is showed on screen. there's nothing, not even a hint. I mean, you don't even see the men in the movie. You don't even see any of these villainous male characters, like, lurking in the background. Like, it's pretty, there's some strange filmmaking choices here. And that's the sad thing, is that at the core of it, you could have had a really good suspense movie. Like, I could imagine, what if this movie was made in the 40s, the 1940s? And what if you had, like, a really good suspenseful director, not Alfred Hitchcock in this case, because he'd be, I don't think that, I think that he would be a little, he wouldn't be the best choice for this movie, that's for sure. But, you know, a good suspense director in the 40s with this story, you could have had a really intense movie about it's basically all about this group of women in this religious colony, and they're all talking about how they've been abused, and they've been made to think that it's just Satan or demons, and basically they're, you know, using religion as like a cover-up for doing their abuse, and they've been using cow tranquilizer and on the women, and then women have died and all this terrible stuff. That's the thing, though, is that you never see anything in this movie. You never see any sort of anything except for these people just sitting around talking. And like, and it gets to be ridiculous to the point of where, you know, like a female character will stand up, and I don't know any of their names in the movie. I can barely even remember the movie, even though I just watched it. But, like, there was this one time where this woman stands up, and she's like, we all know that we are being abused, and that we are being raped all day long, and we have marks and bruises, and we're all this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And she goes into this long explanation because they're not going to show anything on screen. They're not going to show, like, a scene where a woman has an infection and she dies. It's like, no, they're not going to show. They're going to tell. And it's the classic modern filmmaking thing where we don't show, we tell. Because if we tell, we're not going to traumatize you by showing you reality. And so it comes off as like it's less impactful because it's not the story happening in front of you. It feels like the writer's just inserting their own opinions and sort of like telling you what to think. It doesn't really feel like the story is happening on screen, because the whole movie's just talk. It's pretty bad. I wouldn't say it's the worst movie in the world. It wasn't terrible. It was just so boring. It was so uneventful. The acting was really nothing to write home about. Like, even though I really love Nurse Mayflower from Fargo Season 4, her performance was probably the best out of the bunch, but I mean, they really didn't have very much to do. I mean, they just sat around talking. And I'm just thinking, like, wow, what a terrible mishandling of the source material. It's the same thing like with the Dahmer show last year, where they took the Jeffrey Dahmer story and they made it about politics. And they made the whole thing like a slanted show so that they could spread their agenda. And that felt like the same thing with this movie, where they took a true story and they slanted it to fulfill their agenda. And I mean, I can't even really think of, like, what was the best scene of a movie, Marco? Like, I can't even think of, like, the best scene of the movie, other than the scene where the credits start. And another thing too, like, the movie starts off with, what was the caption? Because somebody put it on Letterboxd in their fucking review. What was it? This movie started off with a line that was so cringeworthy that it almost made me want to throw up. It was, let's see, where is it? Damn it, did it disappear already? Damn it. Come on. I wanted to see that review. Come on, let's find it. I'm trying to find this. I am not trying to drag. Oh, here it is. What follows is an act of female imagination. I mean, is that not the most pretentious, like, hateful, like, because it's like, oh, this movie's special because it's a work of female imagination. It's like, who fucking cares who made this movie? Like, I don't care if a fucking AI robot wrote this movie. If it's a piece of shit, it's a piece of fucking shit. Or if it's really good, it's really good. Like, the fact that it would, and basically what they're saying is they're bragging that it was written, directed by women. In fact, let's look at the whole crew. Because let's see if they segregated. Because that's another thing too. It's basically like, this movie is the work of segregation. Like, that's what you could call it. If I see a crew that's all female, that's fucking segregation. Okay, it was not. As far as I can see, let's see. Yeah, it was edited by a man and a woman. Cinematography by a man. Casting by 2 men. Production design. So, they're basically just talking about the writing, which is good, because I don't like segregation, you know. And I say that because there was some critic who was bragging in, like, 2016, I remember some shitty-ass fucking movie podcast that I don't watch anymore. She was bragging that she saw this movie that was made by an all-female crew. And I was thinking, like, God damn. Like, I didn't know that segregation was back again. Like, ugh. Gross. And so, this movie, to me, the only reason that I would ever support this movie or say that it's good is if it was made by, like, a struggling filmmaker in their early 20s who didn't have any money. Like, the fact that this movie was made with, like, I don't know how much money just shows, like, how misguided Hollywood is. Because this story should have been handled so much better. It had the potential to be something pretty good. Like, if this movie was treated well, it could have been pretty good. But instead, it was just, it just was not worth it. You know, like, even taking the agendas out of it, men bad, religion bad, you know, even taking the agendas out of it, this movie is not good. So, like, even Nurse Mayflower and her face, even she couldn't save this movie. And you guys know how much that helped that season. Like, nothing could save this movie. This movie couldn't even save itself. I mean, at the end of the movie, the women leave, I guess, but you don't even get to see what fucking happens. And this is all spoilers. Like, that's another thing, is like, there's no payoff, because all the action, as people have pointed out, all the action happens off screen. Like, there's this part at the end of the movie where they're talking, and by the end of the movie, I just let everything they're saying go in one ear and out the other. Because I was so bored and so just like, come on. I want to get out of here now. That I wasn't even really paying attention by the end of it. But they showed Nurse Mayflower. And and she had a little tiny bruisey on her eye, and it's like, where the fuck did that come from? It's like, there's no explanation, at least that I could get. Like, I didn't understand like what happened, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, but I was like, when did that happen? Like, just these things magically happen off screen, and it's like, ooh, see, we're not going to show anything. And I'm not saying that everything should be shown. Like, people have made the comparison to like Handmaid's Tale, which is basically like a porno, because like all they do is just show all this fake sex, and it's just like, yeah, okay, this is just like, it's not good to show all this stuff. It's like, this isn't doing what you intended it to do. There's two extremes. There's one extreme that shows too much. There's one extreme that doesn't show anything. In fact, if you want to know something bizarre, there's this whole movement of people who believe that rape shouldn't ever be a part of any story ever, even though it's something that can happen in real life, even though there's all these victims of abuse. Apparently, we can't handle stories with that happens in movies. And so there's this whole movement of people who don't want any assault to ever happen in a movie, or even have a character with a backstory of getting assaulted at one point. And it's pretty hilarious. Like, just the constant, like, oh, we can't do that, we can't have that, we can't do that. And it's like, you know what? I'll stick to my movies that are good, like Elmer Gantry, because that's the comparison I made. I it's so bizarre how I did that video about my top 10 best old movies, and I said in that video, roll back the tape, if they made an Elmer Gantry in 2023, it would be anti-religion, preachy message movie. And what did they do? They did they did that. That's this movie. That's all this movie is. It's pretentious. It's Oscar bait. Well, to be fair, I would award Nurse Mayflower. I'll give her an award as pity if there's nothing else that comes out that's good this year. Like, I will give it that. But other than that, this movie's bad. This movie's pretty bad. In terms of a rating, what should I rate this fucking movie? Because I'm thinking about, what food is bland enough to describe this movie? Like, I have given the review too many times, but I will just do it again, just for the sake of, the review is now half an hour, which I didn't expect. So, as I've talked about many times before, Safi had a sister who passed away, unfortunately, and there was this one time where we were supposed to go out and eat lunch, and we were really excited because we were gonna go to this really good looking place, and it had like a frog on the title, on the cover, and it looked pretty good. And instead, she wanted us to go to this restaurant that she liked to go to all the time, and it was like the most terrible, bland food that you could ever imagine. Like, it was just straight up old people food, quote unquote, and it was so bland. And I was like, what do I get here? Like, seriously, what do I get to make sure that I don't get something that just makes me sick to look at it? And I ordered fish with broccoli and mashed potatoes. And oh my God, the fish was bland. It just tasted like it had a sprinkle of salt on it. It didn't have any good seasoning on it. You could tell that some fucking old people in the back, we're like, hey, we gotta watch our sodium today. We gotta watch our seasoning. We gotta watch the seasoning intake because we don't want to get our a heart attack from too much seasoning or some stupid shit. Like some like 1930s like myth about food or something. Like there's been so many myths about food over the course of time, and I just feel like there has to be some sort of a weird like thing that old people have where like they just don't season shit. Like, why don't you fucking put some fucking seasoning on my fucking food? Like, it's like, who doesn't want to eat food with seasoning? Like, unless you specifically request it. And then the broccoli was undercooked. Like, how? Like, there's like nothing on the plate. It's a fucking fillet of fish, broccoli, and some mashed potato, and you can't even handle cooking the broccoli. Like, guys, I just cooked broccoli last night. It took me like fucking 2 seconds. It was easy. It was fully cooked. It was scrumptious. It was good. It was easy. Like, what were they doing back there? And then the mashed potatoes, they were undercooked. They had all these lumps in it, and it wasn't seasoned, and there was no salt. And it's like, ugh, what is this? And then the little person, because that was another unique thing about this place, was that there was this little person who worked at the counter, and he was cool because he handled the desserts, and he was like kind of like this, like, he looked like a guy who could be in a movie. Like, I would like to cast him in a movie because he just looks like he could be in the Gentleman movie from 2020, or like a gangster movie, like a James Bond movie. Like, he was just like the suavest little pie person ever. And he brought over a slice of pie, and oh, thank God, the pie was probably made somewhere else, and they ordered them, and so the pie was actually good. And that was the only thing that was good about the meal. And all I could think was, we wanted to go to that other place. We wanted to go there so bad, and that's what we get. And I don't know the name of the place. I might try to look it up because I've referenced it so many times as a food review, just because it's like notoriously, to me, like some of the most bland food I've ever had. Because if I have bland food at home, I just run in the kitchen and grab some garlic salt or some cayenne pepper, and I'm good. You can't do that with this movie. So, please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of my honest review, and then please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.